I'm here with Pastor Jeremy. I'm here with Joshua Suh and Joshua Phillips, who are both interning here at the Brook. I'm Pastor Eric. Jeremy's already laughing. So what we wanted to do was, as we come into the close of our AKA Names of God series, we've talked about different names of God, and it's been fun hearing from different people, different names that minister to them. What you might not know is that these are the guys that wrote the prayers that you received through text. And so I want to just hear from them, the names of God that minister to them, and what the writing process was like. So so that being said, I'm just going to turn it over to you guys. I just, definitely want to know which name of God stood out to you most, and why was that in the snapshot? We'll start with you, Joshua.
So I would probably say that the one that stuck out to me the most was Jehovah Zidkenu, which is righteousness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the one that I actually wrote the prayer for.
Yeah.
And I really connected with that one because I've lately been very frustrated with a lot of the injustice that goes on in our world, and there's been a lot of unfair and cruel things that have happened to my family as well. And one of the comforts that I have is that God is righteous and that He is going to right all wrongs and bring reconciliation and judge the wicked. And then on top of that, I just also see the ways that I'm not righteous, and the way that I needed Christ to be my righteousness and to provide that way for me. So that's probably the one that spoke to me the most.
That's cool. That's Jehovah Tzidkenu. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. Yeah, how about for you, Joshua? Which name of God ministered to you the most?
As we were working through the series, I do remember growing up, and sometimes whenever my mom and I would talk, or she would pray over me, she would say some of these names like Jehovah Rapha, the Lord is our healer.
Yeah.
That one. Whenever I'm feeling sick or anything, she'd always name that, and I thought that was huge as a part of my formation.
Yeah.
But I do remember, growing up also just constantly being reminded that God is our provider. But in this process and in this season, as we're working through the series, I had the chance to write for Jehovah Sebaot, the Lord of Hosts. And, not only the message that was delivered on that Sunday was very powerful, but just thinking through the process of how do I word this prayer, for me, I tried to get into the mindset of wanting to capture the full picture of what we were given in the passage and in the message, but also remembering that this is a reminder for myself too that not everyone has a background in theology. So wanting to capture the whole picture of God, but using words of everyday prayer language.
Yeah.
But also bringing into different factors of different stages of life that people might be in. So as I was writing this prayer, I tried to think of people who, know the Word, they know the Scriptures, so they know who this God, this Lord of Hosts is.
Yeah.
But at the same time also remembering, there are times where even though we know this in our head, we don't necessarily believe it in our hearts all the time. There's times in our lives where we do get discouraged, and we feel hopeless. And so trying to get into that stage myself, so that I can write this prayer in a way that affirms what I believe in and allow that prayer to speak into my heart. So I tried to think of, as I was writing the prayer, not only just thinking about, and one thing I appreciate about you, Pastor Eric and Pastor Jeremy, whenever you pray, is that you pray the Scriptures. And so I tried to take that into account as well. So I tried to take language from the passage, language from the sermon, but also thinking vertically, this is what I know about God. Looking within, this is what I see in myself and what someone else might see. And providing language in a way that can say, this is my reality, but this is the truth, and so trying to offer that that hopefulness in the prayer.
That's cool. That's cool. I know personally the name of God that really jumped out to me as I was even preaching the series. I think it's the first one we covered was Yahweh. I've known the story of the burning bush. I've taught it before, but for some reason it's like God illuminated it in new ways for me, especially thinking about how this bush didn't get consumed, and because Yahweh is a self-existent one. I know for me that was one that really just reminded me that He's not dependent on anything, but all of us are dependent on Him, and that's a good place to be for us, to know that we're leaning on a God who doesn't need anything for His existence, and that He's always present. So that definitely encouraged me about the name of Yahweh. How about for you? What name of God?
Yeah, for me, I really enjoyed Jehovah Rapha. I thought that was one of the dopest names, at least that I got to write. And the reason why was because God revealed Himself in that way, in a way that's so relatable to us. Like for the people of Israel at that time, they had just been delivered from Egypt. Then they were in the wilderness, no water, began to grumble, right? And life was bitter to some degree, and God provided healing.
Yeah.
Am I saying the right name?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, for me, that just related in so many ways, and I think to all of us, because we see God's handiwork, whether we know it or not, in the multiplicity of ways. But then, so there's times where, man, we're in a crisis, and we look to God, and it's almost like we blame God, and yet God still is so gracious to us to heal us, to work on our behalf, to provide for us. So I thought that was one of the names that really stood out to me in this season of life.
That's cool. And Joshua Suh kind of touched on this some too. As we think about like even just the writing process of writing the different prayers, there are certain joys and challenges in writing that. Just what are some of the other joys and challenges when you thought about how to write a prayer that would help model praying the name of God for the Brook family? What are some things that you guys were confronted with as you're processing the particular name that you're writing about?
Yeah, I think for me is I need to know the character of who I'm praying to, because that ultimately determines what I'm coming to God for. Specifically. So for me, it was just important for me to exactly know what I'm saying about God. That way, I could even assess my own heart. Man, am I asking for the right thing? Am I praying the right thing, or am I just praying my will?
Yeah.
In this particular circumstance.
Yeah, that's good.
I think to continue off of that, as I was writing the prayer, it had me rethink about who God was, and as I was writing this, like, I was continuously being reminded, like, of not only the character of God, of who He is, but the fact and the reality that this God, knows me. Is calling me. I can call out to this God. I can call out to the God who is able to heal, who is able to provide, who is the Lord of hosts. The God who is the righteous one. So all these different characteristics of God, I'm being reminded and relearning, but to know and to be comforted that I know this God personally.
That's great. That's great. How about yourself, Josh?
So I would say, maybe one of the biggest difficulties that I had when putting together the prayers was thinking of a way to pray them not just over my felt needs, but also thinking about how to form the prayer for the congregation and having it broader. What helped is, for both the prayers that I wrote, I structured it based off of how I personally like to structure my prayers, which was in 4 ways. One, I wanted it to be, the first part to be worship and thanking God for who He is. And then the second one was praying for the implications of that name. The third was more bringing it in personally for the individual and for myself. And then lastly, thanking God for how that name speaks to an aspect of the gospel. So, particularly with praising God for His righteousness or the fact that He sees, it was really great to be able to expand that, because, for example, God seeing us, I had never really gone that deep in prayer through that name. So that was a really great practice, and with particularly bringing it in on an individual basis, one of the things that's really cool about the Christian faith is that when we know more about God, we know more about ourselves. And so what I really try to do is take the names of God and who He is, and then ask, what, in light of who He is, what does this say about myself, and what I need to ask Him for because of that. This really hit me in ways that I hadn't thought about before, with God seeing us. We have a tendency to hide and try and hide from God and hide from others. And what we really need to be is, we need to be seen. And so praying that and asking for the Lord to not let us hide in the darkness, and then how the gospel allows us and gives us the safety to do so, that was really great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
One thing I appreciated that all of you guys did is, at different times, was acknowledge that sometimes that name of God is hard to feel like you're connecting with it. You know, whether it's Jehovah Rapha, it's like, God, I know you're the healer, but right now I'm feeling a lot of brokenness. Or, God, I know you're just, you're Jehovah Tzidkenu, but there's so much injustice around me. And so sometimes there's some conflict in our hearts as we pray the name of God. But what I appreciate is that even in those, in bringing out those challenges, you guys are able to keep us rooted in the fact that, but God, this is who you are, and your justice will prevail. You are the one who protects me. Your banner is over me. Even if I'm not feeling it right now, I know that you're always with me. So, and that really is important just for prayer in general. So we think about it, because sometimes we're just, our faith is weak, but we hold on to what we know is true, and that's the character of God and the promises of God, and that is really what ought to fuel our prayer life and help us when we are feeling so shaky. So I appreciate you guys sharing those things. Just as by way of review, we've been able to talk about the name of Yahweh, Jehovah Jireh, Tzidkenu, Nisi, Tsebaot, Jehovah Rapha, and then El Olam, El Roy, and then lastly El Kana, the jealous God. And so, church family, our hope and prayer is that you would be ministered to through these prayers, that you would revisit them, share the messages with other people, and that ultimately our prayer life would be informed by the truths of God and the promises of God and who He is. So God bless you guys, and thanks for listening.